Good evening, YouTube family. It's been a while since I broadcast, so I'm broadcasting to you from the chapel here where we are. So good to be with you again. I'm sorry I haven't done this in a while. I've had to kind of get back on a battle rhythm, but we just finished a Bible study this evening. It's Wednesday night, and we decided to start doing it at a coffee shop. So we're going through 1 Samuel, and I'll tell you why. Because I want to bring forward the person of David to my soldiers. And part of that is because he feels everything that we feel. You know, when we're on a deployment, he knows what that feels. He knows how it feels to be away from family. He knows how it feels to be in the thick of battle and worried so much about your job, and yet you're worried about things back home. And he knew how that felt. You can read through the Psalms, and you can kind of see that because David feels that. But I can't talk about David without talking about certain supporting characters in his story. Not minor characters, supporting characters. And the book of 1 and 2 Samuel that tell the story of David start with, the title of the book is Samuel, and there was a prophet named Samuel. Now, he had a mama who was Hannah. So tonight we kind of talked about Hannah and Eli and Samuel. So the first thing we talked about, and what I titled this was when God's down to nothing. When you're down to nothing, God's always up to something. So Hannah, if anybody heard my Mother's Day message, Hannah was she was without child, and that was already hurt her heart. So she had a husband, she loved him, he loved her, but she couldn't have babies. So according to their culture, he got himself another wife who could have babies. I don't know if that was after 2, 3, 4 years. I don't know when that happened, but got another wife. But he always gave her a double portion of everything he got. So he gave her more food, more money, you know, and but the other wife would always come over. Now this sounds like, you know, what kind of happens between people sometimes. The other wife would come over and she'd mock and make fun of her and humiliate her about not having children. And they would have to go up to worship because they worshipped in Jerusalem. And so they would have to make the pilgrimage up there to bring their tithes and offering, livestock, worship up there. And so that was a long trip that she'd put up with her, you know, saying, I got to go back and get the kids. Oh, that's right. You don't have any kids. Yeah, that's right. I bore Elkanah's children. Oh, but you can't have any children, can you, Hannah? You know, I can't imagine how that went. I mean, it had to be horrible. So, and Elkanah was somewhat of an insensitive dude. And so, you know, he was with her, and he'd always give her the double portion. You know, he'd always give her more food, more money, you know, what is a better night, better house, better clothes. Meanwhile, he's also being intimate with somebody else. And he said to her, he said, am I not worth more to you than 10 sons? Answer, no, not when you're insensitive like that. So he didn't get it because it really hurt her heart that she couldn't have a child. It also hurt her heart that she was being mocked and made fun of. And it hurt her heart that he went out and sought somebody else to have those children with. And his response to that was, aren't I better to you than 10 sons? So she dealt with one insensitive dude. Then there was another insensitive dude. She went to the temple. She starts praying. And the priest was there. And so she's praying, and she's moving her mouth, but her eyes aren't open, and she's not speaking. She's at the altar praying, and he said, so he came to her and he said, hey, woman, put away your wine. Stop coming to church drunk. So she said, I'm not drunk. I'm pouring out my heart to the Lord. I'm asking him to bless me with a child because he never blessed me with a child. And Eli said, I don't know if he felt bad, but he said he gave her his blessing, basically, and prayed that the Lord would fulfill what her prayers were. And I think that night she left her cares on the altar. I think she left them on the altar. And I think if God had never fulfilled her from that night on, she would have had the peace that transcends all understanding that's spoken of in Philippians 4:7, because I truly believe she gave her cares to God at the altar that night. Now, that night, she went back home. It said she wasn't sorrowful anymore. And then later, her husband knew her in the biblical sense of the word, as they say. Literally, the King James Version said that her husband knew her or had relations with her. And then she conceived a son. But she had done something. She had promised God that she would give her child up to him for the rest of his life, and that he would fulfill the Nazirite vow, which would be that nobody would ever cut his hair. He would never drink vinegar, and there were a lot of other things that went along with the Nazirite vow. But the main thing with all that is God gave her the peace that transcends all understanding when she laid her burdens at his feet. She said, I can't do anything about this. Folks, we all need to do that in some way, shape, or form. Whatever you're holding on to, whatever you're burdened with, you probably can't do anything about it anyway. So it's best that you just give it up to God, that you hand it over to him. Let him handle that. Now, in Hannah's case, then he went ahead and blessed her. He went ahead and blessed her with a son. And sometimes, now understand, this story wouldn't mean as much if 1 Samuel started out and said, there's a woman named Hannah and she had a baby, and she was with Elkanah and she had a baby and they lived happily ever after. That wasn't the story. The story was she went through all this journey, this angst, this anxiety, being mocked, being made fun of, all of these things that she went through. Because of that, when she conceived a child, it was this wonderful, joyous thing. Sometimes we lose sight. We're so focused on our goal. And sometimes that is taught in leadership things. Obstacles are what happens when you lose sight of the goal. Agreed. But sometimes that journeying past the obstacles, journeying past the things that she had to go through, that is what makes our story so much sweeter, and what makes the end result when God goes ahead and blesses us, or when he gives us something better that he had in mind for us. That's when everything comes to fruition. We wouldn't be appreciative of seeing that view from the mountaintop if we weren't in the valley. And I know sometimes that's TV evangelist preachers talking, but in all sincerity, sometimes it's the journey where God really refines us and tweaks us and shaves off those rough edges. And by the time we get to the goal, we appreciate it so much more because the journey has been so difficult. So I'm going to go on in just a minute, and I'm going to finish with 1 Samuel 2 and 3. But remember, when you're down to nothing, God is always up to something. That's from my friend Frank Shelton. I love you, man, and we will talk to you later. Peace out.